Yeah, we're going to be talking about motivation. And if you're not teaching young learners, don't worry because the principles are the same. So let's start by checking how you are. So how are you doing today? You can pick an emoji and just type into chat how you're feeling today. Are you happy? Are you nervous? Are you tired? Are you excited? Are you sick? Are you feeling pretty good? Good. I see most people are feeling pretty good. I often check with my students. We add emojis to our chart as they learn more emotions. And sometimes it's a good translation activity because they don't necessarily know how to say in English the way that they're feeling that day. But it's good for me to touch base with my students before we actually try to start class because sometimes there are things that are happening outside of class that affect their participation in class and their ability to learn, and that feeds directly into motivation. So today, in these 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about the types of motivation and motivators, some activities to engage young learners, how to be flexible if we're going face-to-face and online and maybe back and forth. I know that here in Japan, we've been online, we've been face-to-face, we've been online again, we've been face-to-face, and I assume that a lot of you have had similar situations, and some of you are even trying to manage hybrid teaching. So it's really important to have lessons that are flexible so that we don't have to start from scratch each time. I don't want to be on that slide yet. Okay. So one of the things to start with, I asked you how you were feeling, and that feeds into the idea of we need to Maslow before we bloom. So we need to meet students' basic needs before we can expect them to be able to learn. And we can't meet all of their needs, but we can make sure that what we do in the class is intentional to try to build a community that is supportive and caring, particularly. So, for example, if you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, which I think most of you are, this is a little really simplistic version of it that is more applicable now during the global pandemic than perhaps before. Teachers who've worked with at-risk communities have already know this information because a lot of their students do face physiological problems that interfere with their ability to learn. But now, a lot of our students have found themselves not getting enough sleep or maybe being nervous because their parents are apprehensive or their parents have lost their jobs or they've been at home for a long time. And so they're feeling cut off from the community. So where do you think your students are on this chart? Are they pretty high up? Are you back in classrooms and the students are going on as before? Or are they feeling a little bit insecure? Or are they being tired? Where would you put yourself on the chart? Okay. I know most of my students are doing okay now. But for a while, they had a lot of apprehension coming to class, and it was hard for us to switch to online. They had some challenges. When our students come to class, We want them to be able not just to learn new language, but we want them to be able to use that language for creative expression or for projects or for learning new things in English. And if their basic needs aren't being met, that's hard to do. Whereas if they come into class and they've had enough sleep and they've had enough food and they feel secure, those goals are a lot easier to accomplish in class. One of the things I've noticed is that since we've been doing this for a long time now, is I've noticed that, the students are doing okay, but some of the teachers are just tired. Teachers have been doing this for a year now. And so teachers are also having challenges in their own meeting their needs. So it's really hard. You're dealing with your students' lessons. You're dealing sometimes with your own children's classes, and you're trying to figure out what the district means when they said, okay, we're going to go hybrid. And exactly what does hybrid mean? So I think it's important to make sure that teachers are taking care of themselves too, because if teachers aren't getting enough rest, or if teachers are feeling insecure, it's really hard to be an effective teacher in the classroom. So one of the things we can do for building community is to get to know our students, to help our students get to know us, to make a connection, and to use that connection to make a community. So, for example, here's a picture that I made. Now this works good in an online class. So what can you tell about me by looking at this picture? What do you see in this picture that gives you a hint about me? Yeah, I have a dog, and I'm hoping he continues sleeping here during the rest of my workshop. I'm relaxed. I love to travel. I love my family. I love reading. Right. So now how could I change this if I were doing it yeah, and that's definitely coffee in my mug. So what could I do to do this in a face-to-face classroom? Now this kind of picture works great online with the Bitmoji. And you'll see Bitmoji during the workshop too, because my students actually like it. It makes it feel more like we're in a classroom together when I'm in the picture with what we're learning. So how could you put this into a face-to-face class, for example? Okay, you guys are really good at reading clues. Yes, I'm involved with ITDI. Um, I like gardening. I'm not actually very good at it. These are fake plants in the picture. And I enjoy my family time. Photos. Okay, one of the things we can do in face-to-face classes is do show and tell with pictures that are on their devices. If your students have phones, I mean, older students who have their own phones, they always take pictures. And so you can have students show a picture or bring a picture from home if they don't, but show a picture and talk about the picture. Why did they take it? Why was it important to them? And it's a variation of show and tell that works with face-to-face classes quite well. You can also bring an object into the classroom, right? So if you have an object in the classroom, the students are online, they can bring an object to the screen and they can talk about an object that is important to them. And it's also a good way for them to be able to show you what they've learned, what they can talk about. Like I have a student who loves her cats. I mean, seriously loves her cats. And it's what she's most fluent about. So if she has a chance to talk about her cats, then what she knows how to say gets bigger and bigger and bigger as she learns more language. And so she can take the same topic and show me more and more. The other thing that you can do with your students is have them draw a picture. So what does this girl want you to know about her? If you looked at this picture, what does she want you to know? What is she sharing about herself? There's an airplane. I guess they could be dancing there. There's a war and they have to flee, scared of disasters. Okay, I'm going to show you what she actually wrote about the picture because I have a feeling that her picture didn't communicate exactly what she thought it did. So I rode on an airplane by myself. I went to Disney Sea. I want to go again. Okay, so she was trying to tell a story about going to Disney. And so she rode on the airplane, and then there's an arrow showing her at Disney Sea. Now, that's why it's important to let students talk about their pictures. Okay, but the idea is by getting to know the students and letting students get to know each other and getting to know me, we maintain a community that makes it easier for them to learn. Um, Community is really fundamental, especially when we're isolated socially. You can also use chat apps to keep in touch with students between classes or to have some really simple communication back and forth. So you can extend the learning between classes by using WhatsApp, Line, WeChat, whatever is popular in your country. My parents actually, they wanted to have all of our chats in English with the administrative side of class because then it's an English lesson for them too, I think. But I can ask a question and students can either take a picture to show me the answer and or we have these imaginary discussions about what if, and it's a lot of fun to get to know them better in between. And I think even when we are back face to face, then I'm pretty sure we're going to continue this chat in between classes because it can just happen whenever it's a good time for them, and it's really easy to do. This is, and I think it's also, I like having a rubric like this to help me keep track of what kind of attention I've paid to students in class. And so this one tells me, to make sure that I greeted everybody by name, or, that I paid them a compliment. I asked them a critical thinking question, and then praise them for their performance or in effort. So it's nice to have a little reminder for myself sometimes. And there's I think you're gonna get the slides for this, and there's a link there that you can get the chart yourself. So you can create the most engaging lessons in the world. But if you haven't met your students' needs for connection and security, motivation and learning are going to be diminished. Right. So connection underpins everything. So with connection, we have engagement. With engagement, we have learning. And with learning, we're able to provide feedback. So we can't really provide the feedback in an environment where the connection is non-existent. Right? Students never just come to class and learn and go home. They bring all kinds of baggage with them. You bring all kinds of baggage with you, so why shouldn't they? Right? So motivation comes from connection. That, I believe, is true of any level that you're teaching. And if you get one thing out of this entire 45 minutes, it is that we need to build connections with our students now more than ever, because A lot of them are feeling pretty isolated. So tell me, let's look a little bit more specifically at motivation itself. And we're going to be focusing on two kinds of motivation, extrinsic and intrinsic. What do you already know about extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation? How are they different? Can you type in chat? What do you already know about the two types of motivation here? And there's lots of different ways of looking at motivation. Okay, Maslow's hierarchy is one. We already looked at that. Now we're looking at extrinsic and intrinsic. So what is the difference between those two types of motivation? Outside and inside, okay. Intrinsic comes from the inside, extrinsic is from the outside, right? I think to put it fairly simplistically, extrinsic is something that we do in anticipation of getting a reward, or anticipation of getting recognition, or for fear of some kind of negative consequence. Okay, intrinsic motivation is something that we do for enjoyment of the activity itself, and also for a sense of satisfaction. Okay, it looks as if a lot of you are already pretty comfortable with both types of motivation, which is really good. Then you can contribute in the chat to help everybody else learn. Okay, so here's some motivators that fit with both of the types of motivation. So you can think about which of these you use in your classroom. So when we're using extrinsic motivation, as often when we're offering prizes or stickers. You know, do any of you use stickers for getting homework done? Or when we give tests and students can either pass or fail, or when we give grades, or when we give points, or when we have badges, you know, like for online activities. Intrinsic motivation is often enjoyment. We do something that's fun, or we get students curious about things, or we tap into their curiosity, or when we allow them to express themselves creatively, or when we develop autonomy, or when we work for mastery, or when we tap into their sense of belonging to a community. I see a lot of you do both. So while intrinsic motivation can lead students to greater levels of self-motivation, extrinsic motivation, while intrinsic can lead them to greater levels of self-motivation, extrinsic can get them started. Sometimes extrinsic is the initial boost that helps students engage in activity and help them sustain their motivation until they can develop a high enough level to move into intrinsic motivation. I botched that, but I hope it made sense to you. So how many of you use an app like Duolingo for learning a language? There's a lot of apps out there, but I see a lot of teachers using Duolingo. Yes, okay. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of different ones out there. Now, because it's interesting, because often I'll hear teachers talking about intrinsic motivation as if it's better than extrinsic motivation because it's a higher level. And yet, I know a lot of teachers that are using Duolingo. And I know that it motivates me because I get these messages saying, you know, you've got a streak, keep going. Now, recently, I keep getting messages like, you made Duo cry, because I haven't kept up with any of my lessons, right? So don't undervalue, don't undervalue the importance of extrinsic motivation, because if it works for teachers, then it probably also works for our students. So here's a little story about two of my students. Okay, so Gen loved getting stickers for reading books, doing his homework, and Satoshi never remembered to pick up his stickers. So Gen loves competitive games, and especially winning. Satoshi doesn't really care. He loves games, but he doesn't really care if he wins or loses. Gen loves a challenge, but he has a lot of anxiety, and he doesn't do very well on tests. So his testing doesn't really reflect how much he's actually learning. So both students do well in my class, but they do well with different types of motivation. So it's really important to include both. Neither one is better than the other. For example, I have a Fitbit that tells me how many steps I walk in a day. Now, at first, I started walking every day and taking stairs because I got the feedback of how many steps I'd taken. Or I'd get, if I hit 10,000, I'd get the fireworks or something. But after a while, I started walking every day because it was enjoyable. And so extrinsic motivation helped me grow to where intrinsic motivation took over, right? And I can enjoy the activity. So extrinsic motivation can help our students get going when their language level is quite low. And then intrinsic motivation can take over as they become better with the language. We can use both. Right, so we want to use the extrinsic to get them started. Then we can use like competitive but low stakes games, like maybe have very short games so a lot of people get to be winners. And we can have students working in pairs and in groups and in teams. And gradually, we can increase the satisfaction of the activity. They can get engaged in what they're doing and not really care if they're getting points. Most of my games turn into collaborative activities. Students start helping each other to make sure everybody wins. If it's creating sentences, our goal is just to make sentences and not necessarily to get the points for the sentences, or at least they forget it pretty quick. And it's the same way of, I use the same type of activities then to assess what they're learning, because it makes sense to basically assess them in the same way that they're learning. So I'm getting an accurate feel for what they've accomplished and what we still need to focus on. Okay, now I have a box. What do I have in my box? You have 20 questions, and I will answer yes and no. And you cannot ask what's in the box. What do you think I have in the box? The object size may not be the same size as the box. So here's the box. It's not actually anything from Amazon. So what do you think is in the box? Those are not questions. Can you eat it? No. Are there photos? No. Is it food? No. Is it stationary? No. Is it edible? No. Is there a cat? No. Is it a kind of gift? It could be, maybe. Is it a toy? Veronica got it. Actually, people never guess these right. So you guys are really on top. It is a toy. It's a little Ultraman toy. So often I'll bring in an object like that in my class, and I'll give students 20 guesses to get it. Now, often they end up wasting the first few times, they waste their guesses. So they'll ask, like, is it a ball? Is it a dog? And when we get to 20, I stop the activity. I put the box away, and then I'll bring it back out. And students become more strategic with asking their questions so that they are more effective questions. So it's a really great activity, number one, to get them involved with asking better questions, but also to get them to use the language that they've been learning. And, questions are one of the most important things to learn in language, right? We want them. And so what kind of motivation are we tapping into there with this kind of guessing game activity, guessing what's in the box? What kind of motivation is that? It's a really simple activity, but what kind of motivation? Okay, extrinsic. Yeah, it's a little bit competitive. They have a chance to win, right? There can be points, but also it can be curiosity, collaborative, which is intrinsic. And often, if it's a face-to-face class, students start working together, which makes it building a community. Okay. This is a little chart that I started using in my online classes. So students, when we were doing something new in class, students could hold up 1 finger, 2 fingers, 3 fingers, or 4 fingers to show me how they were doing with the subject that we were working on or the content. And so it was, what I really liked about this, it was a very, there's no detriment to showing you don't know something. It's really easy to show the teacher that you're really lost. And it's great feedback for me to know that I need to, if I get a lot of fingers on the Zoom screen, I know that I need to explain things better or go back and try it a different way. And if I get, 4 fingers, I know that we're all doing pretty good. So, but I really like having a way for students to let me know how they're doing without having to raise their hands and say, I don't understand, because nobody wants to do that. So this is a really no stress way. And there's a link where you can get your own and put your own Bitmoji in there so you can personalize it. So another activity from a great book by Shelley Sanchez Terrell is close-up pictures here. This is another guessing game. You can see I use a lot of guessing games in my classes. So these are close-up pictures. You can have your students take them, or you can take them yourself. And you can see, can you guess what each picture is? If you want to take a guess, type in chat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and what you think the picture is. Yeah, if you're online, private chat's good for letting them know also, Silvana, to let them know, let you know how they're doing. Okay, so we got wall for 1, 5, gate, dog's ear, pavement, beaver, squirrel, a leaf, upside down chair. Oh, those are all really good guesses. Okay. I don't see many for 4, though. All right. Were your guesses correct? So number 1 is a wall. You're correct. It's a rock wall. Number 2 is the dog who hopefully will keep sleeping a little longer. That's Max. Number 3 is a leaf. Number 4 is a weed. That was a vocabulary word that week. But my students they keep hoping that somebody will guess Christmas tree because they thought it looked like a Christmas tree. 5 is a fence. And then 6 is the back of a chair. So if you can take, your students can take the pictures and you can make them close up, or you can take the pictures, or you can also do it from, if you're teaching online, from your course book, just zooming in on one of the pictures. But it engages the curiosity, and it also helps to build community, and it helps students get to know each other if they're taking the pictures. You can also give an assignment like find something that is round. Take a picture of something that's square. Take a picture of something that's made of metal. Take a picture of something that has, a chemical equation that you give them if you're doing content. So you can use it in a lot of different ways, but it's a way to build community and get students to engage with each other and engage with the content. And when they're guessing like that, it creates flow. And so students are using language, but not focused on the language. They're focused on the activity. And so it helps to engage them and they enjoy what they're doing. It builds the intrinsic motivation. So the definition of flow that I like here is that student engagement is based on the culmination of concentration, interest, and enjoyment. It's like the perfect meeting of those things. And then from that same story or same study, I liked this too. It says participants experienced increased engagement when their perceived challenge of the task and their own skills were high and in balance. The instruction was relevant and the learning environment was under their control. Participants were also more engaged in individual and group work versus listening to lectures, watching videos, or taking exams. So flow is something that we can aim for in our classes. So a teacher in Indonesia makes these Kahoot, her classes are all still virtual. So she creates these Kahoot quizzes for her students every week. And so it gives her a chance to see how they did with the content or which questions are too difficult. She gets to see how many people got each question correct. And she noticed that teacher or students started using different names so they could take the quiz more than one time. Students can see how they do in comparison to other students, although they don't know any names. And they also, there's no penalty for doing poorly. So they can retake it and they can, get a better score. So it's a great way for her to get feedback on how they're learning. And it's a great way for them to get feedback on how well they mastered the content. So it is competitive. It feeds in the extrinsic motivation through competition and getting points and all. But, it also, it's enjoyable. And so the students do it over and over and over again. Another thing you can do, we want to be aiming at creating autonomous students. We want to help our students become independent and self-motivated and the type of people who use language to do things, not perennial test takers. So we want our activities to help them build those goals. So sometimes it's nice. Another teacher in Japan has students communicate with her through the chat app. And so each week the students share what they want to share. And so here's a video of one of the students sharing what she learned that week.
Markers, pencil case, crayons, markers, pencil case, 2 crayons, 4 markers, 1 purple pencil case. How many crayons? 2 crayons. How many markers? 4 markers. How many purple pencil cases? 1 purple pencil case.
Yeah, I love using that video just because she is so cute. And yeah, that is Let's Go, just in case you aren't familiar with the book. But I thought it was a really clever way of connecting with students outside of class and giving them a choice of showing, how they want to show you what they've learned. Another teacher in Japan, or the same teacher actually, she also found that when students have a voice in what they want to learn, and when she's learning with them, that they're more motivated. So sometimes she lets them decide what they want to learn. And if she doesn't know how to say something in English, then they use apps like Google Translate to look it up. And then also to give them a choice in what they want to do with the language. So I think that both having the choice and having a voice are very motivating for students to give them some control over what they're learning and how they want to show you what they've learned. Okay, this is another one from Let's Go, just in case you're not familiar with the book. Like the new edition has all these new readings in the workbook, so it's really fun. And my students really got excited about the ocean, right? You saw the picture of me with the coral reef at the very beginning. So it's not hard to imagine that my students would also get really excited about the environment and undersea and the creatures that live there because, I'm excited about that. So the students, after we read the article or read the story, students decided that they wanted to learn more. And so this is an ongoing project, but go to my next slide. We are starting to turn their research into Kahoots. And so they research questions and answers and then we turn it into a Kahoot so that other people can also test their knowledge. So here, I'll let you take the quiz. We'll finish up with this. So you can type in the chat what you think the answer is. What is the number one beach trash? Is it plastic bags, cigarette butts, plastic bottles, or straws? What do you think is the number one beach trash? Plastic, plastic. Bottle, straws, straws. All righty. Actually, oops, wrong one. I forgot, I don't have a circle on this one. It is actually cigarette butts. They were surprised to see that too. Cigarette butts are the number one trash on the beach. Believe it or not. Those others are really common too. Now another one, what is the most dangerous trash for dolphins? Is it fishing nets, oil, plastic bags, or plastic bottles? Dolphins. Fishing nets, oil, plastic bags, or plastic bottles? I keep forgetting I don't have an animation showing the right answer. It is fishing nets. Yes. If you guessed fishing nets, you were correct. Last question. This is a true false. So every 100 square kilometers has more than 45,000 pieces of trash. So every 100 square kilometers has more than 45,000 pieces of trash. True or false? Yes, it is true, sadly. And if you want to see the rest of my students' Kahoots, you can just go to Kahoot and search for Barb Saka, and they should pop up. They're all public. But it's an ongoing project, and there's another one about how much do you know about Japan that you can try out. Okay, so to sum up here, the things that we talked about today and the things that you should remember from this talk, to motivate your young learners, you need to build community. You need to find a balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We need to provide a variety of activities so that we are tapping into different kinds of motivation. We want to aim for flow. We want students to become so engaged with the activity that they forget about the language that they're using. We want to give them a choice in how they learn and how they are assessed. We want to give them a voice in their preferences and to give their opinions and to share, to become self-motivated, independent learners. And I think there's one more slide here. There is a book that is a great way to learn more about motivation if you are interested in following up on this. It is coincidentally by Oxford University Press. And that's all that I have. So I think that we will go over to questions and answers and see what we got. And okay, I'm not seeing I'm not seeing questions and answers here. Do you have any? You can type them in chat here.
Hi, Barbara. This is Ollie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so on the Q&A tab, if you can see it, can you see the published tab?
I do see it. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing.
No problem.
All right, so I mentioned hybrid learning, and somebody asked, what is it? And, that's a really good question because nobody seems to know. Some schools are telling students that hybrid learning means that they have an in-class lesson and they record themselves so students who are at home can see what's happening in the class. And other schools are having teachers record everything and have it on YouTube so students can self-access it. And then also have a face-to-face version for students who can come. I think hybrid learning is the way to give teachers a lot of headaches, if they didn't already have enough. But I know teachers will figure out a great way of doing it. But the idea behind hybrid is to let students be in class if they feel safe and stay home if they don't feel safe, or if they're unable to come to class. And that was Arwa K that asked that. And then Terry L asked a question about when to start creativity and then how to nurture creativity. And, you know, actually, I think we want to nurture creativity from the very beginning. Students come into our classes, often if we start with very young learners, they're really creative when they come into the classroom. And by the time they get into junior high school and high school, a lot of the creativity is gone because it gradually gets beat down in favor of tests. So what we want to do is tap into their imagination and allow them to have silly fun and to create worlds and create, you know, draw pictures to represent what they want to say and to just have fun in class. And that actually will usually build the creativity. Lenka B asks about an online activity to engage students and interact for at least 5 minutes, only with each other to warm up. One of the things that I've done with my students in the online classes is if they come into class early, I can have a scavenger hunt up on the screen. So a list of things for them to go look for in their house and bring back to show each other. Or they can come up with their own questions. Like one of the activities I did recently that they enjoyed was, you know, 2 truths and a lie. So they came into class, and the ones who were early, when they're just warming up, would tell each other 2 things that were true about them and 1 thing that was not true. And they had to guess which was which. Andre asks about how we can use show and tell to elicit vocabulary from students. And I think one of the ways to do that is to bring in the object, like, where's my toy? I don't have my toy, but let's say that I did. So I was holding my toy. And I can have the students work to describe it and then type in chat, or I can write on the board the words that they don't know how to say. I teach monolingual children. And so it's very easy for me to come up with translations of the words that they don't know how to say. And if the easiest way to do that is simply start talking about anything, really, because what they know in languages is quite limited. And so anything we talk about that isn't actually right in the book elicits a lot of new vocabulary. Or we have an experience, like I'll bring out my dog, for example, if I teach at home. And then we'll talk about the dog. And that's me showing and telling, but they're learning a lot of different vocabulary on that. Let me see. Okay, so Maria Teresa asks about motivating preschool students. And actually, preschool, it's pretty challenging to teach preschool online, unless you've got parents involved too. But in the classroom, I think that the preschool students, one of the things I think you have to acknowledge is that a lot of times you're going to hear about things initially in their first language. And allowing them to use their first language and then giving them back the English that they need is building motivation. It's showing that it's getting them tapped into curiosity, or bringing in an object and letting them guess what it is, or letting them, you know, bring in an object and show each other and talk about something that's important to them. But also a lot of extrinsic motivation works pretty good at that age. They enjoy playing games and they enjoy singing songs, or intrinsic also with singing songs and doing, finger plays and moving, a lot of moving and creative drama. Those are all very motivating for young learners. And stories, engaging with storybooks and picture books. Those are all but that's motivating at all ages. And we have time for a few more questions. Let me see. Lorna B asked a question about how to motivate students to speak, especially in breakout rooms. That, if you're online, that's a challenge. I teach teachers online, and when I go pop into the breakout room, sometimes they're not talking either. So it's not just restricted to our young learners. It's across the board. One of the things that I've heard teachers do that seems very successful is to assign roles. So everybody in the breakout room has a job, and then it makes it much easier for them to, focus on the tasks when they're in the breakout room, and to speak to accomplish the job, and then to come back and report. So that helps, I think. And let me see. And who is this? Oops. My team asks, how do teachers know exactly what students' intrinsic motivation is? And the answer is we don't. Students are different, just like we're different. Some people, what motivates us is as unique as we are. And I think that part of our job as teachers is discovering, by getting to know our students, discovering what does motivate them and what motivates them both. Are they the type of students who will work for stickers? Or do they really enjoy creating new songs? Or do they like making stories? Or they like doing drama? And that's part of getting to know our students and building a community. And I think that is a pretty... we'll finish up with this one. Daniel R. asks about how do you teach the students who have different motivations in a classroom? And I think that goes back to the point I made about using different types of activities. So not all activities are going to tap into all the things that all students find motivating. But if you have a variety of activities and you have novel activities, it's going to tap into something that everybody finds motivating. Okay, Ollie, I will turn it back over to you, if you're still there.
Okay, yep, I'm still here. Thank you very, very much indeed, Barbara. And a big, thank you to you for giving us your time today and also sharing your ideas with us as well. I can just see from how active the chat box is how everybody has found that very valuable. So to all of our participants, and from all of us at Oxford University Press, a big thank you to Barbara for the work you put into presenting for us today and for sharing your ideas. Now, I'm sorry to say that we couldn't cover all of the questions in the Q&A chat tab because there actually were hundreds, but we hope that you've all got something new and useful to either use yourself or to reflect on in terms of the teaching that you already do. So the room will close in 2 minutes automatically. So I've just got one more announcement to make. So again, thank you very much indeed to Barbara. Barbara, please feel free to turn off your mic and camera whenever you're ready. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for coming out today. I appreciate it.
So thank you again, Barbara. Now, just to quickly note for everybody that your certificate will come to you via email, and that's one certificate that covers the whole event as well as the session recordings. I have one more thing to share with you today, though, which is I'd just like to take the opportunity to share with you one upcoming free webinar that we have for teachers. So we're going to put some information on the screen now. On Wednesday, the 10th of March at 10 a.m. China Standard Time, Kai Schwirmer, who's the co-author of Oxford Phonics World, will be exploring agile ways to teach phonics. So Kai will share tips and tricks on how to adapt Oxford Phonics World to work both online or in the face-to-face language classroom, and show you how parents can easily continue the learning at home. So a little pop-up should have appeared, and if you're interested in that, please take a moment to check that out. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday, the 10th of March. So all that remains for me to do today is to thank everybody who's come to any of the sessions today in Block 2 of the English Language Teaching Online Conference with Oxford University Press. It's been our pleasure to spend time with you today. And again, thank you for your valuable time and joining us. I hope that you've all got something new to think about. So if you have registered for other sessions over the next couple of days, please access those via your invitation emails. And otherwise, best of luck with your classes. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at a future Oxford University Press event somewhere around the world or online. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Good luck in your classes. Stay safe. All the best to you all. Bye-bye, and thank you.